We have massive news to discuss today regarding the Toronto Maple Leafs, as a report has surfaced revealing that the Maple Leafs and William Nylander could be close to an extension. So we'll break down that report in this episode of Leafs Digest, as well as Ilya Samsanov. He has spoken out on his struggles, so stay tuned for all that in this episode of Leafs Digest. Before we do get into it, a quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. We notice about 80% of you guys who are watching right now are not subscribed, so if you aren't, scroll down and click that button as we're on the road to 6,000 subscribers. And thank you guys for your continued support. It means the world to us. All right, we have a lot to discuss today. A major report dropped yesterday, it was, I believe. And let's just get into the first topic, which this is really huge for the Maple Leafs if it ends up being true. So there's a huge article that dropped, and I'll break down everything, exactly what was said by Chris Johnson, I believe was the reporter. And let's just start with this. So this article popped up, quote, "At this point in time, it does seem as though the Leafs and William Nylander's camp are on the same page on a number of fronts. And as negotiation continues between the Leafs and Nylander, reports suggest both sides are on the same page." Now, this is very, very big. I'll get into the exact kind of quotes here in a second, but William Nylander has been a guy who has been performing very, very well this season. Obviously, coming into the season, the big question was, will they extend William Nylander? Will that extension happen? Will it happen soon? And ultimately, it has not happened yet, unfortunately, and William Nylander is increasing his price day by day, and we haven't spoken about a William Nylander extension in what seems like a few weeks now because of the other things that are happening with the goaltender situation, the defense situation. But this is still a utmost priority for Brad Treliving and an utmost priority for the Toronto Maple Leafs. As realistically, this is super important for the Leafs going forward, because if you wait and leave it until free agency and you don't get an extension done, that could be detrimental if he leaves for absolutely nothing, especially with the way the Leafs have been playing this season. Very, very disappointing. And again, these reports are saying they're close, so they need to get an extension done soon. And let's get into exactly what the article says. And this is what Chris Johnson said on, I believe it was a radio show or a podcast. He said, "They're certainly working away at it, and I think that's maybe why there was no worry. At this point in time, it does seem as though the Leafs and William Nylander's camp are on the same page on a number of fronts." Quote, "For one, neither of them want to talk about this much publicly. Obviously, they're keeping a lid on the negotiations as much as they can. But secondly, I think the one thing that remains unchanged is that Nylander absolutely wants to be a Maple Leaf long term. It's his goal, and it's his camp's goal to get a deal done." And obviously, the price keeps going up with each day, with each game, with each win the Leafs get, and Nylander continues to impress and have a career season for the Maple Leafs. His price will keep going up, but that does not change the fact that William Nylander has remained firm on the fact that he wants to be a Toronto Maple Leaf for life. He wants to be a Maple Leaf going forward, which is why a lot of the concern, realistically, as much as that's kind of a sign that there should be no concern for Leafs fans, it's also a bit of the reason there's been so much concern, because if he wanted to be a Leaf so badly, you'd think that Brad Treliving and the front office and ownership could come together and get a deal done with Nylander before the season started, so that we wouldn't have to worry, and the Leafs wouldn't have to worry about all of this happening throughout the season. And it was a much bigger distraction throughout the start of the season, when William Nylander was obviously off to a phenomenal start, but everyone was talking about the Nylander contract and why there hasn't been a contract done. But now, as we're kind of getting into this season more, approaching the halfway mark, approaching the All-Star break, and approaching the trade deadline, talks about that have kind of cooled down, so it's good to see they're still very close. And there's some more information here just to throw in. Basically says the Leafs want to sign a player that's had a tremendous season for them so far this year, and the fact that the talks remain, that there does seem to be some optimism there, is a positive sign as we look towards the new year, when they'll try to get the deal done. And again, they've been in constant communication. There were reports that Nylander's price gone up. Brad Treliving, Toronto GM Brad Treliving says he's impressed on how the 27-year-old can block things out, essentially saying that I miss all these crazy contract talks and everything. He's playing unbelievable hockey, and he's playing the best hockey of his life. As through 30 games, he already has 42 points, which is crazy because he's already reached the total of his 2020-2021 season a few years ago. And again, Nylander, he's 27 years old. He's entering his prime. There's no indication that an extension won't happen. The question is whether that will be 10 million, 11 million, maybe it'll approach 12 million. At the start of the season, we know reports came out that the Maple Leafs were hoping to get him for maybe, I believe, 10 or 9 or 10 million. And now they're approaching, it's going to be at least 11 million, we'd like to think. And I saw this tweet here, and it's very interesting. And this is kind of highlighting what other teams have to offer Nylander on a 7-year deal to match what the Toronto can offer on an 8-year deal. And apparently saying, he's not getting a crazy number. Could it be 10 million? Could it be 11 million? The fact that the Maple Leafs kind of have an advantage in that front, he wants to be a Maple Leaf. Who knows what the bidding will get to? Obviously, William Nylander wants to get the most money possible out of the Toronto Maple Leafs and out of his agents. But at the same time, I think he's going to understand, and hopefully there's a respectable number in the middle there, whether it's 10, whether it's 10.5. I'd be fine giving him 11, and if it takes 11.5, you get it done anyway, because you cannot let a player in his prime, coming off of a contract year, playing the best hockey. Who knows? Where would the Leafs be without this guy so far this season is a question that no one really has the answer to. but it would be a lot worse than what he is right now at 42 points. And again, this is a great sign. We've discussed this so many times in the past, and hopefully Brad Treliving in the front office and ownership can buckle down and get an extension done, because clearly it's not a distraction for the team anymore. It's not a distraction for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and it's certainly not a distraction for William Nylander, at least regarding his play. Maybe it is outside of the contract or outside of the game. But Nylander's playing phenomenally, and the more you let him kind of approach free agency, maybe there's a chance that there's more likely that he says, maybe I will test maybe I will test my free agency going forward instead of re-signing with the Maple Leafs for sure, and see what other teams have to offer regarding scenery, regarding all of this stuff, and of course cash. But I think ultimately the Leafs will offer the most money. He wants to be a Toronto Maple Leaf, so that deal should ultimately get done. The question is when. Maybe after the new year, maybe into the second half of the season, maybe after the All-Star break and trade deadline. We'll have to see, or maybe it goes all the way into next offseason when he potentially enters unrestricted free agency. But let me know what your thoughts are on that in the comment section below. As we move on now to Samsanov speaks out on his struggles. I've been harping on this. There's no surprise that Ilya Samsanov, and it's no secret that Ilya Samsanov, is struggling this season. And that goalie tandem is something that every single off day Sheldon Keefe is asked about, whether you're starting Martin Jones, whether they're starting Ilya Samsonov. Martin Jones gets the nod tonight, and I've been adamant in saying that at this point, Ilya Samsonov is so checked out mentally and physically, he's not performing well at all, that they need to let him just have a rest day, take as many games off as he needs to until he gets his mentals right and his physical actual abilities right. And let Martin Jones be that 1A starter until there's a back-to-back, and then, of course, Ilya Samsonov will need to play, or hopefully Joseph Woll will be back at some point soon, so there's not too many of those. But he spoke out on what he had to say regarding his, struggles, and he said it's tough right now. And he goes on to basically say that, he said this after the brutal loss of the Sabres, I need to figure out everything in my head. It's not about technique, it's not about nothing, just in my head, just about mental spots. Now, this is it's up to you to decide. I know a lot of Leafs fans are a little bit upset about this in the sense that there is a lot of technical things that he's doing wrong, according to a lot of fans out there. There's a lot of easy goals. You saw one of the weaker goals that I've ever seen let in by Ilya Samsonov against the Sabres. It was just a shot under his blocker, and unfortunately, or maybe it was under his glove. Regardless, he is not in a good spot to be starting games for the Maple Leafs right now. Obviously, they don't really have a choice. He had a great season last year for the Leafs, and again, thank God Brad Treliving didn't give him that extension and let him go to arbitration, because that could have been a mess. But ultimately, they're in a rough spot right now. The Leafs are in a rough spot, and Joseph Woll cannot come back soon enough. And it's good to see him take some personal accountability. But like I said, it seems to be all in his head. And if he can figure this out sooner than later, I think he will be in a much better spot, and the Leafs will be in a much better spot as a result, because you can only rely on Martin Jones for so long. He's been he's 33 years old, Martin Jones. He's been a decent goalie in this league, but he is not a 1A goalie on a team that is contending whatsoever. And I think once Joseph Woll comes back, there's a chance that Martin Jones slides into that backup goalie spot, and they maybe even let Samsonov go or trade him to another team in desperate need of goaltending. But that'll wrap up the video. Let me know in the comment section what your thoughts are on all of this, and thank you guys for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.